it work now? Yeah, the people who know me, I'm quite passionate for robotics, and it's my great pleasure and honor to be here with you this afternoon at DLR. The connection with DLR has been running for actually 25 years, and but the people who know me, they also know that life is always a matter of priority, and my true passion is soccer. When I came this morning, I was during the coffee break. The very first thing that Gerd told me when we met, sorry for Bayern, because I was here 3 weeks ago as kindly hosted by the KUKA friends at the Allianz Arena with my two boys for the match of the Champions League between Bayern München and Napoli. We lost, but it was an exciting match, so the very first thing. And I still remember April '89, which was actually my first visit to DLR, and Gerd kindly invited me to give a talk, but also I could take the opportunity for the semi-final of the UEFA League match between Bayern and Napoli. That time was the time of Maradona, and we were a better team, so... Okay, so I borrowed this picture from Usama. I have to say that it's the second time in my life I see Usama wearing a tie, and I was a kind of impressed this morning. So this must be really an important event, and I'm flattered to be here. So I borrowed this picture from one of the fascinating talks and pictures that Usama has given around the world. And just to emphasize one concept which has been underlined already in the presentations of this morning, I'm sure it will be continued in the afternoon and tomorrow. And also, I apologize since now that I won't be joining the farewell party and maybe do some singing tomorrow night, because it's a priority. I have to be back to Napoli because Napoli is playing Manchester City home tomorrow, and shame on me, I know, but anyway, robots are with us, within us, and among us. And the area of field robotics has very much been touched upon in the previous talks. And ideally, in these 50 years of robotics, what has happened is that robots have ideally walked from factories up to our homes. Those there are listed perhaps the most successful applications of industrial robots, of field robots, and service robots. And it's quite obvious to say that as you move from the left to the right, the challenge is represented by the level of autonomy that you want to endow with your robot. As clearly as field robots have been very challenging, but much attention has been spent recently on service robotics, and especially I'm speaking about robots for the humans, where not only autonomy is an issue, but also safety and dependability are important issues. And it's not only a technical matter, as I will emphasize later. Service robots. Martin mentioned the cool video of Roomba with a cat and the cat chasing the dog. I have it here. It's pretty cool. So robots find application in what we may call 4D tasks. The 4D standing for dull, dangerous, dirty, and dumb. And these are just some scenarios where service robots may find application. Personally, as a control engineer, I've always been fascinated by the hybrid assistive limb. When I tried the suite myself, I was really impressed to see that when I was thinking to move my arm, the device, the exoskeleton would lift up my arm, and this was really fascinating. And when I had some students from the classes of my kids coming to this big science event in Napoli, and when they saw it, oh, that's cool, that's really amazing when they saw the hybrid assistive limb. for the realization of future robots, the robots that will have to live in our homes one day, has always been important, and has always been increasing attention in the community on biological inspiration. Has been a sort of virtual circle, as it was emphasized also this morning by Usama, like problems in mechanics, and this has happened in the same, as a sort of marriage, if you wish, between biology and robotics. So on one hand, we, the technicians, are looking at biomechanics, at neurosciences, at psychology, because we want to gain more knowledge from the human beings. At the same time, we can represent a wonderful arena, a wonderful gymnasium, we can say, for the scientists to test their hypotheses and validate their models. And the fallout of this virtuous circle can be measured in terms of the humanoids, in terms of the zoomorphic robots, the prostheses, the cyborgs, and also in terms of the micro-nano. When we speak about personal robots, I've had the opportunity to interact often with journalists. And the journalists, they always want the funny, I should say the sexy stories about robots. I will go back to this point later. And humanoids are clearly, capturing the media much more than the mechatronics technology, that although behind a humanoid there is a lot of mechatronics. But so the science journalists, the new version of Ashimo was launched a couple of weeks ago. It was in the media. So I got a phone call from this Italian journalist writing for La Repubblica and the Espresso magazine, and she was asking me, why, I mean, are we ready to have humanoids in our homes? Say, no, of course not. So why are the people so fascinated by humanoids? Yeah, that's true, but Ashimo represents a wonderful research platform to test, the most advanced algorithm, and it's not by chance that, for instance, the same balancing technique that is used in Ashimo is also used in the U3X, the personal mobility device, which was presented by Honda last October in Times Square as a sort of urban mobility vehicle. And speaking about the zoomorphic robots, you very well know Paro. Paro is the robot seal, and which was designed by Takanori Shibata at AIST as a sort of entertainment robot for elderly people. But a couple of years ago, I discovered a project with neuroscientists not far from where I live. It's a hospital near Napoli, and they're using Paro as a device for carrying forms of autism, early forms of autism in kids, because the kids are much more kind of prone to open with a robot puppet other than with the real pet. So I mean, there are some issues which have to be considered carefully if we are ever thinking about having personal robots. So what is happening actually in robotics? The 50 years were mentioned, and being a native of 1959, together with many folks in this room, we celebrated this 50 years of robotics and also our birthday. By the dawn of the new millennium, robotics has been undergoing a major transformation in scope and dimension, and has really expanded into challenges of human world. And human-centered and lifelike robotics are where the progress will happen. So in a way, we have a number of core methodologies and technologies which may consider to be well assessed. And the further progress, it's now time for an outreach toward other communities, and it's there that we can find the room for the new generation of robots, which are expected, as I said, to safely and dependably cohabit with humans in homes, in workplaces, in communities, and so forth. So looking beyond, these are some, it's a non-exhaustive list, which in my opinion are research challenges which are already being addressed in a number of research projects. Soft robotics, biomechanics, haptics, the human-robot interaction in this broader sense, what is being labeled as a robot coax, neurosciences, machine learning. I remember when I saw John this morning. John was visiting me a few years ago, and I have a sister who is a professor in the School of Economics, and she does data analysis. And actually, the thing she does, and I was not aware, is very close to machine learning. We badly need machine learning for robotics more and more. Virtual prototyping, animation, surgery, sensor networks are also research challenges which will be undertaken in the next year. And as I say, there is a growing connection with the robotics research core. But there's another important issue which should be carefully considered. 3 years ago, we were hosted by the prestigious Accademia dei Lincei in Rome, which was Galileo Galilei was one of the first members of this academy 5 centuries ago, and there was a symposium about robotics as a new science. And there we talk not only about technical issues, but also about ethical, legal, and societal issues, and the so-called roboethics, which is the human-centered ethics guiding design and construction of and use of robots. So those who are designing, realizing, and using robots have a number of careful issues to consider. And looking beyond, I think the fact that this community has evolved and has reached a level of maturity, as it was underlined this morning already by Usama in his historical videos, is reflected in a sort of milestone that we all together, and I see many faces of scholars who contributed to this project. This is the handbook of robotics, which appeared in 2008, and I used to say that after my kids, and even before anything else, this was the biggest professional achievement in which I spent 6 years together with Usama and the whole robotics community. And Springer was so happy that the book received a prestigious award, the so-called Prozor Award, that when we were in Anchorage last year for the International Conference on Robotics Mission, ICRA, we could fly our private jet to land on the glacier of the McKinley in the Denali National Park. So we were, as you can see, robotics, that's just a joke, but it's Photoshop. But it was, it's nice to think about. But by chance, the colors of the aircraft were exactly the colors of the handbook. So, this is the original colors of the airline. But it was fun to be together with some folks at the base of the McKinley, after the. And you may wish to know, and when my wife heard this, she was mad at me because she has kind of hectic memories of the many after hours and weekends and chasing, working on the handbook. So Usama visited me 3 weeks ago, and we started working on the second edition of the handbook, in which we will accomplish a critical review of the chapters, of course an update of existing contents because robotics is moving so fast, and also addition of new contents, and the main novelty will be the inclusion of multimedia in terms of video, animation, and software, and the handbook is expected to be published in 2013. So this is just to give some kind of perspective of robotics, but of course, the driver will always be the market, because of course it's not up to us, the people in academia, but the people in working for robot companies, and I'm speaking not only about the big robot manufacturers, but also about the small and medium enterprises, are always looking for a market for these robots. So in the ideal revolution from the analog wave to the first digital wave and the second digital wave, the question is, will we observe a robotics wave following the digital consumer and network wave in the second digital revolution? I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this study, which is now old, and the question is whether this forecast will be fulfill it or not. This is a study commissioned to the Japan Robotics Association, and in 15 years from now, the studies say that 2/3 of the world market will be about personal and service robots. So, as compared to the blue, which are the classical manufacturing application. This doesn't mean that manufacturing will vanish, but if you think about the number of units, number of robots that are sold for manufacturing, there is a tremendous potential to have 2 or 3 order of magnitudes of difference in terms of the unit for personal and service robots. These data were kindly provided by Martin Hegele for the, oh, he's there, for the, this is the annual report, correct me if I'm wrong, the World Robotics of the International Federation of Robotics, and those are the data of 2010. There are about 1.3 million industrial robots operating in the world, and there's been an increase as compared to the economic downturn, the recession of last year, of 50% in the market, in the total market value of robot units. And there is an estimated market for robot system of about 17.5 billion US dollar. And this is the, I hope it's visible. Yeah, I think it's visible. Those are the data in terms of the operational stock of industrial robots projected over 2014 for the 3 areas. The red there is Asia and Australia, the gray is Europe, and the blue is America. And as you can see from the applications there, it's always the case that mainly automotive and electronic industry are the big driver in terms of number of units in use for the classic. So those were the industrial robots. Then if we look at the same report also gives data about the service industrial robots. And here it's usually the case to distinguish between professional service robots and personal service robots. As you can see, the professional service robots, the increase has been moderate. And most of the units were installed for defense and field applications, like in the plenary talk by Martin was discussed. Whereas there's been a substantial increase in terms of personal service robots, including all those entertainment and leisure robots. So this is not only the household robots, like for instance Roomba, but also those kind of cheap, like a few hundred box toys, if you wish, which are selling well. And so it's mostly, as you can see in the diagram on top, it's mostly defense and field, but there is also little room still on a different order of magnitude for medical, logistic, construction, mobile platform, cleaning, inspection, underwater, rescue and security, and others in terms of personal service robots. A few words about research agenda. So these were the figures from the market. But of course, where are we heading for? Where is our roadmap in terms of achieving the goal of expanding the robot market? These are some notes about what's happening in the 3 or 4 major geographical areas. It's quite bizarre to see that actually the first industrial robots were designed and built in the US, and despite the entrepreneurial culture of the US, actually they were mature elsewhere, up to the point there are nearly no more industrial robot manufacturers in the US. And as you well know, most robotic research is funded through military, space and security programs. Although, thanks to the effort of a number of scholars led by Erik Christensen, who is the Kuka Chair Professor and Director of the Robotics Intelligent Machines at Georgia Tech. It's a pity that he cannot be with us today in this symposium. But the current booth is represented by the National Robotics Initiative. In Japan, the situation is slightly different because there's been a kind of keen strategy for creating new industries, and this includes robotics as one of the 7 areas of emphasis. I was sharing this data with Hiroshika Inoue, who is also a member of the advisory board of one of our European projects, EQUAD. And there's always been a close collaboration between government, academia, and industry. And also, this is another important issue that I will be touching upon in a few slides, in a few minutes, because the robot manufacturer can rely on a public opinion that robots are widely accepted by society because they are seen as useful helpers, and they are really seen as co-workers to their human counterparts rather than job killers, as a typical stereotype which you read in the media. In Europe, it's always the case, you know, that's this is kind of common sense to see robots as job killers. And also they have a strong home market covering a large spectrum of robots, not only the classical manufacturing application. And the robots are typically part of a huge vertically integrated industrial conglomerating the build-up of massive research and development and commercial power. So this virtuous circle is happening very much in Japan. In Korea, one of the 10 next generation growth engines is robotics. So they're investing a lot, and it's been there too a close collaboration between government, academia, and industry. I will be spending the rest of my talk speaking about European robotics because I've had the honor and the burden of representing European robotics in a number of committees and initiatives. So robotics industry, I think it can be saying is very strong, but it could be less fragmented and less dispersed. And I think these are good times, especially the latest 5-10 years, because most of the research projects have seen industry working in close cooperation with academia. And this kind of fragmentation is kind of being reduced. And also, at the same time, the industry observers agree on the following global trends, that all major manufacturers, including the big ones, have to identify new areas to maintain growth, and also the rapid technology development in the areas which are relevant for robotics, like mechatronics, computers, sensors, programming and human interface, build a huge potential toward new application scenarios, which are very far from even from our widest imagination. And this kind of developments may result in a dramatic redistribution of the market share of robot manufacturers in future application scenarios. I'm sure that all the Europeans in this room are familiar with the so-called European Strategic Research Agenda. I saw Rainer Bischoff somewhere during the coffee break. I think he's here round, and he's been the coordinator of Europe, the European Technology Platform. You can probe further on the website. And one of the visible, tangible results of the coordination action for robotics in Europe, which was managed by Europe, the CARE coordination action, was the strategic research agenda, in which 5 main areas were identified as a good potential for the robotics market. But the common denominator was recognized by this roadmap exercise with the strategic research agenda in terms of the converging technologies. And even if you see this as 5 separate areas, you really need a lot of cross-fertilization among these 5 areas. And this is the well-known list with the 8 SRA commandments. I can read them verbatim, but this can be found easily on the website, and if you go to the website you can download the PDF of the strategic research agenda if you are interested. I'm talking especially to our guests from outside Europe if they want to be updated on the... And also the nice thing is that this agenda is being updated. There are questionnaires which are sent to the different stakeholders, so this will be a sort of continuous exercise for midterm and long-term road mapping of robotics up to 2030, in 20 years from now, if I remember correctly. The European challenge here that we have is real to gain from a benefit in terms of a tighter cooperation between academia and industry, so as to exploit the full potential of the excellent, I think we may say so, European robotic research, achieving faster technology transfer, increasing European competitiveness, of course in a good and fair sense, and expanding the industrial activities and reaching a worldwide leadership position. And there's always been a number of gaps which have been identified between academia and industry. But actually, this is not totally correct to say so, because in the past, and Gerd in his keynote talk this morning has given a number of examples where this technology transfer has brought to very successful results and even commercial products. But what has happened in Europe has always been a sort of cooperation which has taken place between privilege, academia and industry. So this was the successful, for instance, DLR KUKA story, or DLR with Schunk. So I think this is fine, and we have seen, you know, good products with the commercial fallout. But actually, it can be more in terms of a tighter link between academia and industry. So the question is, how can effective and efficient academia and industry cooperation be achieved? And here are a number of success stories. I don't need to go into details of this. This has been widely covered by Gerd, and it also is very well known to the community. I just want to mention two projects on which we have cooperated with DLR. So our connection is not only for soccer, but also for robotics. This is the Friends project, which was run by Antonio Bicchi at University of Pisa in Framework Program 6. And the good news is that 2 weeks ago, we have a new project which has been kicked off in Rome, coordinated by Alessandro De Luca, who was also a visiting scientist here in the Institute for 1 year with the Humboldt grant. And this is Safari, safe and autonomous physical human-aware robot interaction, in which the same partners as Friends plus some other partners are involved. And then I've seen also some people from Dongwei Li from Technical University of Munich. Other success stories can be recognized in terms of the force control system. ABB was the first, actually the first in Europe, because to be honest with you, Fanuc, having worked extensively on force control myself, I should not refrain from mentioning that Fanuc was the first robot manufacturer to include force control as a commercial product in one of the industrial robots. But ABB had some customers that demanded for full 6 degrees of freedom force torque sensor, and this promised to be a standard very soon for their common products. We also worked in Italy in cooperation, like consulting for Comau, which is the third robot manufacturers in Europe after KUKA and ABB. And we work on a number of algorithms for automatic identification of robot payloads. And yet some more successful stories is the Delta design by Ramon Clavel and also the people in Montpellier, which has been sold to ABB with the Flex Picker, the parallel kinematic machines. And also there is another design at Lundtech in terms of a modular and scalable desktop robot, which is now an ABB product. And also force torque sensor are, of course, very important. I've always had brainstorming discussions with Gerd and the people in his group about enriching the sensory set. And of course, it all starts from force torque sensor in terms of the interaction with the environment. So the lessons learned was that, as was underlined this morning, that often was the case that cooperation resulted in the recognition of new problem areas on the part of academia, which in turn encouraged creative thinking in the direction of new potential neighboring applications on the part of industry. So there's always this kind of dichotomy, market orientation versus long-term orientation. And this continued result-oriented dialogue also led to build-up of trust. So compared to 15, 20 years ago, thanks to these success stories, there's been now more trust. And even issues like intellectual property right and public sharing have been kind of decreasing in importance in the way there is a more trend to be open, not to be scared by publishing some of the results into the literature. So step by step, this kind of continuous interaction, exchange of ideas is also leading toward practical product development versus the pure visionary methodology theory that we in academia used to think about. You know, we don't care about what comes next in the next step. And one instrument which has been aimed at tightening the cord between academia and industry, again, the European audience is familiar with ECODE. ECODE is the European Clearinghouse for Open Robotics Development. Is a project, is an integrated project led by Alois Knoll at Technische Universität München, in which I'm the co-coordinator of the project. And this is a project which has been financing a number of small-scale experiments. This is one picture taken from GILAS, which is one of the 51 experiments that we have funded, in which you have a robot co-working scenario into the aircraft industry, with the big KUKA robot and those big parts of a fuselage of an aircraft. But it's not only experiments, it's also the structured dialogue. Richard Volpe, you can even recognize him sitting at the bottom of the table, and this was a lab tour that 10 experts took last month to labs in North America, in which we were visiting and also trying to understand better and is also Eric Schunk represented there, who is also, I think, should be with us later today, I guess. So, a few words about the operating scheme of ECODE and why we can claim as being quite successful in terms of funding these experiments. Basically, the way it worked is that we got quotes from industrial sponsors, be them big robot manufacturers or also small and medium enterprises. So they were offering quotes for hardware, for middleware, for software, anything. And then some people in academia and some people in industry, they got together and they worked on the proposal using this offer hardware, middleware, software from industrial sponsors. And we were administering the proposals, and the proposals they got reviewed by independent international reviewers and panelist members, and then the European Commission has been funding a number of selected experiments. The average size, to give an idea of those of you not familiar with ECODE, is an experiment of about 300,000 euro for a duration of up to 18 months. And this has proven quite successful in terms of tightening the cooperation between academia and industry. And still about the wish, the desire to bridge the gap, I should mention another current initiative. Once again is Rainer Bischoff from KUKA, and I also saw Miss Anne Wendel from United Robotics earlier in the audience. This is Robotics. This is a coordination action which is the logical stem from EURON, the old European Robotic Research Network, and Europe, the technology platform that I mentioned. And all the stakeholders are contributing to this coordination action in terms of identifying market-relevant research and development in robotics, how to innovate in robotics thanks to the technology transfer, and how to ultimately create new business. And I want to conclude this presentation with a few words about the phase of European robotics, because I've always been suffering for the fact that the image of European research, as I say, having interacted with, I'm often in charge of the dissemination in one of the European projects as sort of my natural attitude toward PR and social relationships, so it's including journalists. And in my opinion, and I share this opinion with many colleagues and friends, is that the image of European research does not represent the quality and the quantity of work done. If you go to Wikipedia, you will be stunned to see that less than 5% of the depicted robots are European. And this is by no way corresponding to the real thing, in terms of the beautiful mechatronics and robotics realization that we have seen. And I just want to... This is a commercial from 4 or 5 years ago.
The new Citroen C4, alive with technology.
So this is the Citroen C4 car. Citroen is part of the PSA group. And look at this other commercial, which appeared a few months ago. Actually, a student showed it to me. I had missed it. And look at this other commercial. So it's more fun to drive a car than sending rovers.
da 18.500 euro e con gli ecoservice Peugeot.
It's more fun to drive a car. I mean, this is quite, that's something wrong. I mean, why was the case that 5 years ago? I mean, this is the same industrial group, it's PSA. So 5 years ago, robots were cool and it was the car transformer. 5 years later, it's in a kind of negative sense. So I come from a country where the power of media has been quite an issue. And I was always embarrassed as a scientist to go around the world, even to represent the Robotics Automation Society of IEEE as the president, and know that back home, you know, we would have this kind of tycoon is a kind of too gentle word. But last week I was at a conference in Eschede. This is a nice workshop of the human-friendly robotics. And just by chance, we were having the social dinner, and the announcement was made that he would resign. And of course, you know, the following day when I gave my keynote, I was kind of celebrating. But I mean, the power of media is much more than we think. And I think there's an influence also on the science ultimately leading to the market, because this is really negative, giving a negative image of robotics. So dissemination, establishing a brand. So I think we have the mission of bringing together the stakeholders and communicate one common vision standpoint. And it would be nice to have like one contact point instead of the many sources where the journalists and the media, they can gather information. And also, we have to make, it's our role to make material easily accessible for the media to write stories about robotics. And this has been done, this must be done not only at the lab level, but a European scale level. And I think this is everybody will benefit from this. So we have to enhance the dialogue. Currently, robots are still seen as information islands without any standardization of data communication, programming language, or even terminology. You know, sometimes when we got to work together with people in cognitive systems in our university, in our school, we were speaking different language, and actually we were looking at the same aspects of control, even at the same kind of a hierarchical level. And also, we are in need of initiatives to grow, to be grown, to share advanced training. And I'm speaking also about not only about the conventional industry internships of PhD and professors, but also the companies have to trust academia and also send the industry people for scientific internship in academic labs. And again, you know, science journalists do not know about European robotics, and perhaps we haven't done much in Europe yet. I think the Americans have been quite successful with the grand challenge and the competitions, and those have proven to work. And perhaps in Europe we should do also more along that direction. And this is quite obvious that you know, we spend a lot of time in getting our H-index and publication, but sometimes, you know, in terms of industrial usefulness of having an H-index, I think of 34 or 35, which I think is my H-index, you know, in terms of useful industrial usefulness, that's another issue. And I want to finish with just mentioning an undergoing initiative. Actually, this symposium, Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, also belongs to the it's just 1 week before, but it was so prestigious that actually this is the kickoff. I think we may say so, because it's the first listed on the website. If you go to the website robotics-week.eu, this is the European Robotics Week, which has actually been kicked off a week ahead with a preview with this symposium. And we're happy to, this was promoted by the Robotics Coordination Action. And we were really astonished to see that 18 countries, more than 125 organizations, and more than 340 events, with the lion's share being Italy, Germany, and Spain, if I remember correctly, in terms of the number of events. So those are events, school visits with lectures on robotics, guided tours like open house for pupils, Open labs, exhibition, challenges, robots in action on public squares. And I just concluded like quoting Ben Lippert, the CEO of KUKA Labs and also the chair of Europe. And this is quoted verbatim by his words in the press release. Robots save jobs in Europe. Robotics keep production in Europe competitive. Robots will become assistants in industrial settings and in service areas. So I'd like to thank you very much for your kind audience, and I look forward to the other presentation. And I'm sharing also some picture from the past where you can see a number of colleagues. This is just a preview of something. Thanks a lot. Oh, by the way, in the lingo of the cell phone and the smileys, that's a smiley for a robot, if you realize.
Thank you very much.